Hello, Wheaton sports fans. This is Wheaton Sports Talk with Lou Ragoose. My guest today is Wheaton teaching and coaching legend Neil Johnson. Neil, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Glad to do it.
Yeah, so this is actually the first one of these that I'm doing. Do you know what a podcast is, Neil?
I think I've read a little bit about them. Yes.
So we're just gonna have a conversation that could last as long or as short as we want, and we can cover as many topics as we want, and it's just very informal and hopefully interesting to people that went to school in Wheaton or watch games in Wheaton and like reminiscing about the old times, because that's kind of what I'm going for here. And when I think about you, of course, your daughter Elizabeth was one of my best friends in high school in my class, and so it's always weird to call your friend's parent Mr. Johnson, but you're like the one guy that the one
Just
guy
call me Neil.
the one guy I always remember. Yeah, amongst our friends, I think we called you Steel Neil.
Could be. It goes back to the days when I used to have 90 people in a study hall, and I had to walk around to keep them quiet with a newspaper.
So where are you living these days?
We live in Mesa, Arizona.
Okay. How long have you been there?
We moved there last October.
Okay.
We sold here at the lake, and we decided, I guess my wife decided one place is enough to own, so we sold, and now we live in Mesa, Arizona, Carriage Manor RV Resort.
All right. And I'm catching you over the phone right now while you're visiting Minnesota. Is that right?
Yes, we're home for a graduation. One of Tara's boys, Cole, graduated, so we had to come back for that. We didn't have to. We wanted to.
Okay. Well, I think we can start talking a little bit about basketball, because that's your favorite sport, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's a lot warmer than coaching football.
So you came to Wheaton to be a teacher. You had some experience coaching and teaching at other schools before that?
Yes, I started in 1962 at Halstead, Minnesota, and I was there for 4 years, and then I went to Frazee, and I was there for 3, and then in 69, we moved to Wheaton.
Mm-hmm. And Wheaton had a good basketball coach by the name of Wally Simonson that had some success prior to you getting there. Did you take over right after him?
No, George Sawyer was the coach.
Okay.
When I was George there. Yeah. George was the coach. I met Wally at the state tournament, but he was long gone when I got there.
Okay. And so when you took over the basketball program, that was still in the old school, in the old gym, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was one of the best gyms for teaching. You could have the kids run the stairs up and down and around, and I'll never forget the first year I was there. I didn't give them a basketball. We just ran and got in shape.
Yeah. And then what was the game ambiance like there? How was it different than the current gym in Wheaton?
Well, the old gym had theater seats. It's one of the only gyms, and it was one side was all people loved it because it was like going to a concert. They had cushioned, nice, beautiful seats. It was a wonderful gym. It really was, and they had a big stage on one side. Yeah, a lot of fun to coach there.
And what do you remember about some of your first teams you had in Wheaton?
Well, the first year I got there, we had only 2 seniors. We had Steffens and Earl and one of the Gale boys. So we only had 2 seniors. Mm-hmm. We were loaded with sophomores. We went fairly far in the district, but we had a lot of kids coming back. And I'll tell you, the first couple of years there, at one time we were ranked 5th in the state, and that's when they only had 1 class. Wow. I mean, we had an undefeated season for, I think we only lost 1 game or 2 games that 1 year. And we had some wonderful players. We lacked height. We didn't have any height. About 6'1" or 2 was probably one of the walls was 6'2", but we were a little short. But we had some really good ball players. I still say that one of the best guards that we have anywhere in the state that year were Steffens and Clinworth. Mark Clinworth was you couldn't trap him. You couldn't. He could dribble. He could shoot. He could drive. He's probably the best guard I've ever coached. He could have went anywhere.
And so, for those of us that never got a chance to see Mark Clinworth play, Chad Clinworth graduated from Wheaton in 1995, and a lot of people still remember seeing him. Was he similar to Mark in how they played?
I don't know. I never did see Chad play. I was long gone then, but I don't know. Mark, he was all state. That's when there was only one class. He was WCCO all state player, and the only one in the whole area that was, because he was just that good, and he would have been a great college player. Went to Morris on a full ride, and all of a sudden his dad got cancer, and Mark said, I got to be with my dad. He moved back to Wheaton, and he never did go back to college. But you couldn't imagine a kid that could handle a ball and pass as well as he could. But we had others on that team. Bobby Kennedy, he was a kid who became a real eye specialist, died way too early, but he was a tremendous shooter. He used to sneak in the coal bin at the old high school, turn on one light, and sit there for hours and shoot. That's what these kids did. I had to kick them out of the gym. They would not leave the gym. They wanted to play, and then they got to playing one-on-one when they were done. But that's what it takes to be good. Yeah. They just were basketball junkies, that whole team.
And then I read about another guy named Gary Brannis.
Yeah, Brannis. Gary was one. He could jump. He could jump right out of the gym. But here again, Gary was only about 6 foot. He went on to play down at St. Cloud State, and he was on that team that lost to Melrose in the finals of the region. And that was a heartbreaking loss. People in Wheaton still, I'm sure, would remember that loss to. That we lost to Melrose, the eventual state champs, and we gave them all they wanted until the last couple minutes when two of our guys fouled out, and they beat us at the free throw line right at the end of the game.
Yeah. So what happened there? Because around Wheaton, a lot of people say that there was a problem with the refs in that game. Is that something you could attest to?
I can attest to it. I can easily. I tell you what, I couldn't believe fouls. When you have the inside position on the free throw line and you're blocking out, and the guy behind you is 6'5" reaching over your back, but you on the inside are called for the foul. We lost two guys at the end of that ball game when we had the lead with just a couple minutes left to go in the game. Yeah. It was a terrible call. But anybody that ever was at the game will attest to it.
Yeah, and Melrose had a really good player, I understand.
Well, yeah, it was right, but yeah, they had some great players. Yeah. Oberding, I think at that time was a freshman, but he went on to play pro ball.
Sure. That's who I was thinking of, trying to come up with his name. So was in the moment, it's always different once you're reflecting on the game. But were you guys frustrated in the moment with the calls that were being made?
Well, as a coach, I was hoping the kids weren't, but there's nothing you can do about that. All you can do is complain about it afterwards. And I only had one technical in my life, so
tell us that story.
Well, that story was because I was in Breckenridge, and it wasn't on me. Wheaton had a guy by the name of Ivan Newman. Yeah. And Ivan sat behind the bench, and he started in on the referee. And they gave the technical to me.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. No, that was my one technical.
Did you turn around and say something to him?
No, I didn't. I didn't find it out until the referee told me that afterwards. He said it was not. I made a mistake. It wasn't you. It was the guy behind you.
Well, I'm sure he told that story at his bar there over the years.
I'm sure Numi did that. Yes. So I told it to him a few times.
Sure. Yeah. So as the years went on, what were some other memorable teams and players you had?
Oh, we had some good players. Danny Vipon. I tell you what, Stuart Johnson. Both of them. I remember both of them down at the gym in Morris in a game where they both dunked.
Wow.
Danny could he could 6'4" and he could jump like a kangaroo. And Stuart was not that big, but he had spring. Yeah. And that was a good team. We had Danny Vipon played the 4 years of college ball, and was a big time college ball player. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we had a lot of good basketball players back then. That was the year that we got beat in the district and probably had a chance to win. But I don't want to reflect on the woulda, coulda, shouldas because that wasn't a case of refereeing. We just plain got beat. Sometimes it'd be a turnover, sometimes it'd be a foul or whatever. But right. Wheaton's had over the years some. You can go back to Gary Fable and back then, and there's been a lot of really good high school basketballs come out of Wheaton. It was a pleasure to coach there. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. What was it like playing in the new gym then when that was first built?
Oh, that was first rate. I mean, we had 3 gyms side by side. We had by far the biggest gym in the whole district by that time. Now in high school, it was a wonderful experience there as far as coaching too. We'd pack it. We'd have to close when we played Breckenridge. The police or the firemen would close the door. They'd pack it. We would pack it back then. You don't see that so much anymore, but back in those days when we had our good teams, Breckenridge had their good teams, played Fergus Falls, those kind of games. You couldn't get a seat in the gym. Yeah. They were packed.
And so eventually, what made you get out of basketball coaching?
Well, I just got burnt out. You have to have fire. When I first started coaching in Wheaton, I would go every Saturday. I forget what but Milton would come with me, little Danny Jorsham, mm-hmm. and we'd have 3rd and 4th graders, and then we'd have the next hour we'd have 5th and 6th graders. Ron Josart provided uniforms, and we had uniforms for some of these kids, and we'd have the kids play at halftime of the varsity games. And to have a real good basketball program, you got to start down in the 3rd, 4th grade, 5th, 6th grade. Then you have to have a good 7th and 8th grade junior high program. And back then we did. George Sawyer was working with us and with the junior high. We had John Tauber was a wonderful junior varsity, and then I had Derry Peterson was back there coaching with me, and we had some great coaches. And after a while, it was burning out. You just can't keep doing it, and we didn't have the interest. I didn't feel kids had the interest then that when I first got there. Sure. But so it was time.
As time went on, were there ever any teams or players that you watched that made you wish that you could get back in it?
Well, yeah. Well, the year I left, we had I'm trying to think of he moved in from Moorhead.
Yeah, that would be on the Peter Nats team.
Yeah. Well, Peter was Peter. I started him as an 8th grader. Mm-hmm. Pete Nats he's one of the guys. I can't name all these kids because I can't remember them all. But Pete was a great high school athlete. I don't care he was a state track champion in the hurdles. He was a great football player. Played and a great football coach at Hawley. Pete was a great athlete.
And David Kubat is the one that you're referring to, who moved in from Moorhead.
Yep, he moved in from Moorhead, and we won the district that year. Mm-hmm. But John did a good job with that team. Mm-hmm. Tauber did a real good job, and they won. But there were some real good athletes on that team. I think I wonder if Whitey Well,
Whitey would be a couple of years before that, I think, right?
Yeah, Whitey was a wonderful guard. Him and Craig Sawyer were great guards. Yeah. No,
All right.
and really, and good football. Whitey was a track, football, basketball, and a good coach.
Mm-hmm.
He's, in fact, I think Whitey's probably still coaching. I tell you what, you couldn't ask for a better kid than Whitey Feline. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Yep. I definitely had him for several years as well. So as the years went on, toward the end of your coaching or toward the end of your teaching career, you got into football coaching. Can you tell us the story of how that happened?
Well, I wasn't planning on that. When I first started out coaching, I started in Halsted, and when you're in a smaller school, you coach everything. So I was an assistant football coach there. And we had we played 8-man football first year I was there in 1962. And the next year, the coach left in Halsted. Mm-hmm. Jerry Mizigatis there. And he got out of teaching, so I got the head job because I was the only one there that could coach.
Yep.
So, and then we went to 9-man football. 9-man football started in 1963, and was I ever blessed with good kids there. We had linemen that were averaging 220, 225. Mm-hmm. We had a running back, Ronnie Carlson, that went to UND, was a star up at UND. We had Ramstead, who was played football for Morris State, was an all-state player. We had 9-man football. We went 2 years, never lost a game. And so that was 9-man football. Well, then when I went to Frazee, they couldn't get an assistant coach, so I assisted Jim Satter, who was from Wheaton. Jimmy was a Wheaton boy, was an All-American football player out of Concordia, and I assisted him 1 year. And all I can remember that year was it rained and snowed, and I told Jimmy, get yourself another assistant. I'm out of here. So I won basketball, but we had some real good teams in Frazee too then. Mm-hmm. In that year. Mm-hmm. But in fact, we had Moorhead High down in the district by about 1 point at halftime, and then they got the press school, and then it was all over. But they went to the state, and they were runner-up to state that year. But we had good kids there, so then I got the job, but it's a wrestling town. Frazee is a big-time wrestling. So instead of staying in Frazee, Jim Satter actually said, I know a deal down there. It's on the school board. He said, I'll get you a job. I'll get you a job in Wheaton. So, because Wheaton was looking for a basketball coach. Mm-hmm. So Jimmy made a call to one of the board members, and they called me up and asked me to come down and interview. I did. I got the job, and I was there for 20-some years.
Wow.
So
that's a cool story, too.
Yeah.
But it was fast forward then to 1988. A guy by the name of Pete Vergelt quit coaching before the season started, and Mike Gale took over. He coached the team in '88. His son Tim Gale was on the team. They had a tough year. Maybe won one game that year, and then there were some changes afoot where they changed to 9-man, and George Sawyer was the athletic director at the time, and so the plans were put in motion to change to 9-man for 1989. And then how did you get put into the mix there?
Well, instead, Mike didn't want to coach anymore. He had a very good State Farm Insurance Agency and was a wonderful football coach. Mike was a great athlete, local, like all the Gale boys were, from Wheaton. And so the superintendent talked to me, and he said, would you be interested in helping out for a year? Couldn't get a football coach because Pete Vergelt, he'd resigned. So I said, yeah, I've coached 9-man football before. I guess I could give it a try. Little did I know, I was jumping into some players that were absolutely wonderful. Mm-hmm. I mean, these guys, all of a sudden we had all kinds of great football players, and 9-man football was perfect for our size.
Right.
Here's a school that when I got there, we had 90 kids in a class. Now we're down to about 40 kids to a class.
Yeah.
So football is numbers, and it took us a while, but we really had some good teams. Mike and I co-coached that first year I was there.
And so some of those players that first year, we Tim Gale, Brian Schultz, Jake Norton, John Behrens.
Yeah, John Behrens was probably one of the best running backs. He was all-state. He was a tremendous running back. He had speed and he had size, and he played for Morris State, and he was one of the best running backs in that conference. So I mean, he was a yeah. We didn't lose many games when we had that bunch. I'll tell you, they were all good athletes. All good athletes.
And then, so it turned from a 1-year deal into a multi-year deal.
Yeah.
They signed your extension.
It did. Well, then, I had good assistants. Whitey was there, and we had one guy left from Russell.
Bob Thompson.
Bob Thompson was there, absolutely, and then Jim Milne. I can't forget Jim. Jim was an excellent football coach, and so we developed some pretty good teams then at that time, and we lost some heartbreakers. We lost some games I think we should have won. Maybe it was poor coaching, but we had some really fun years.
Yeah.
We had we recruited some of your relatives from over at Tinta that turned out if you remember Aaron and Neil and Tom Krenz.
Well, of course, the word recruit maybe shouldn't be used, but maybe open enrollment. Open enrollment.
I guess that's what it was.
Yep.
I guess that's what it was.
Whether there was encouragement to come over or not, it was all legal.
No. Well, they moved over here, so what are we going to do?
Yeah.
But they were great players, and you know what? They're great Americans. Those three boys went in the service and served our country overseas many times, over in the Afghanistan and Iraq conflicts. And I think Aaron is still in the other two of Tom and Neil have now retired or whatever, but they were great athletes. Basketball, football, all-state football players. Tom had a great career at NDSU, and you all know what NDSU football is all about. I was blessed. I really was blessed with some really good athletes there. And then it was time to kind of retire and get out. And Tony Teal was an assistant for me, and Tony was a good football coach and dear friend of mine, and I was just so happy that he got the job because he continued to do a good job. You yourself, you guys had a great year, great season.
Yeah, thank you. So before we wrap this up, I just wanted to touch on, over the course of the pandemic, we lost one of my all-time favorite teachers and one of your very good friends, Derry Peterson.
I couldn't coach without Derry. We were as close as you could be, I'll tell you that. I'd known Derry. He was at Concordia, and I was at Morehead State, and he played for Concordia. I played for Morehead. So, and then I'm a dear friend.
What was it about his personality that made you two click?
Derry was he had a sense of humor. He thought like I did. He was a defensive coach. He loved defense. Him and I both firmly believed in defensive basketball, and we could talk about anything. Plus, he was a darn good Democrat, just like me.
Yeah, last time I was back in Wheaton, I found some of the old materials that Derry would give out. Nobody wrote a more in-depth game recap and in suggestions for what to do better the next game.
Right, you got it right.
He had hilarious illustrations included with his tips and tricks.
Yeah, I wish he was here to talk to you.
Yeah,
he was the guy was absolutely my best friend.
Yeah. And my favorite story from him that he would always tell was the time that the pro wrestling was at the Wheaton gym.
Yeah.
He had to go into the locker room and take a bottle of liquor away from Andre the Giant.
Yeah. I was there that night when he. Yeah, that's correct. The guy, the pro wrestlers would sit and they'd have their jug and drink the whiskey or whatever that's what it was before they'd go out and wrestle. I mean, yeah. So
That's funny stuff.
yeah, it was funny. Yeah, he was. But Derry had a lot of that stuff. He could be full of it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
He was a great teacher. Some of his trials are legendary.
The trial of Big Al.
The trial of Big Al. Derry was the inventor of that, and he was Melanie too was a home ec teacher, and Melanie was priceless. She was a very good friend of ours. In fact, we introduced my wife and I, Sharon and I, introduced Derry to Mel.
Oh, that's great.
We thought they'd be a great couple, and they were, and they had two great kids.
Yeah.
Great kids.
Yeah,
Stacy and Stephanie.
Mrs. P. If we ever needed hemming or something to be done, we could have Mrs. P. do it for us, and all we had to pay her was a pop. We had because she had that refrigerator with pop, and we just had to bring in a can to replenish for her.
Yeah, well, that's a great story too. Yeah, I'll tell you, those are good times. We had a great staff. Yeah. I'm not going to mention all, but I mean, I stayed Betty Allsaker, and and the people that were there. You can't say enough about the teachers that we had. We used to have a lot of fun because the teachers would all get together. We'd have parties after ball games, and yeah. But some of those were legendary too. But I don't want to get into that.
Yeah. This is a family podcast.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Well, I think we'll let you get back to your family here, Neil. It was great to talk to you and hear some of these old stories, and I'm sure a lot of people will appreciate listening to them as well.
Okay, thanks, Lou, and I just say God bless to all the people in Wheaton.
All right, and God bless you, and thank you. Take care of yourself.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Lou.
All right, and that is our first episode of Talkin Wheaton Sports. If you have any ideas of other people that we should give a ring, make sure to let me know, and we'll do that. Hope you enjoyed listening. See you next time. This was brought to you by our sponsor, Love's CBD Hemp Oil, the strongest CBD oil you can get anywhere for this low price. Click on the link above or visit loveshempoil.com to order now. Save money by ordering directly from the processor.